We see ourselves as some kind of independent individual that's unrelated to others. We have an inherently existent personality, and everybody else does too. And so we relate to sentient beings in that way. And then when we come to Buddhism, we hear about being kind to sentient beings and benefit sentient beings. But when we see ourselves as inherently existent, being, this kind of person in this role, and other people as that kind of person in their particular roles, then when we hear about being kind to them, we think that means doing whatever they want. Yeah, because in the worldly way, that's what being kind to somebody means. It means whatever they want you to do, be, or have, you do, be, or have that. Isn't it? Isn't that the usual connotation of being kind to somebody? Yeah, they want you to go to the movies with them, so you go to the movies. Yeah, they want you to do this business deal with them, even though it's a little shady, you do it. Yeah, they want you to, do whatever, and so you're kind to them, so you go along with it. Yeah, isn't that usually how we look at being kind to people? Yeah, they want to eat Chinese food, so okay, I feel like Italian, but I'll go to a Chinese restaurant to be kind to them. So that's what we think of as kindness. But there's not a lot of wisdom in that view of kindness, because sometimes what sentient beings want, or sometimes what they ask us to do is getting involved in something that's harmful or detrimental or non-virtuous. Yeah, your buddy has a really quick way of making a lot of money so that now you can go on pilgrimage to the Buddhist sites in India. Yeah, so you sell a little bit of drugs on the side to get the money for your pilgrimage trip. Yeah, believe me, there's people who do that. Okay. So, sometimes when we don't have wisdom, we think benefiting others means that we just go along with what everybody wants, okay? On a superficial level, all the little daily wants, their daily likes and dislikes, that we go along with it. And then when they criticize us, we think, oh, well, I better go along with that too. They're wondering what I'm doing at over Labor Day holiday, meditating. What kind of crazy thing is that? Or, I spend a lot of time volunteering. You volunteer for some organization, and then your relatives are going, why are you spending so much time on that volunteer organization for these people who are lazy bums? Why don't they just go out and get a job anyway? Yeah? And why are you out there helping them? That's just enabling them. Yeah, and then we think, oh, well, I want to benefit these friends and relatives who are talking like that, and they must be right, so, you stop your volunteer activities to please them. Okay? So this is what we call Mickey Mouse compassion. Yeah. We once did a skit at a Dharma center I was at, with somebody playing, about Mickey Mouse compassion, where the office manager was taking all the money from the Dharma center's treasury and giving it to all the people who came because they were all so short of money and, needed help. Yeah. So, and that was kindness. Yeah. So, we played that out and, we all laughed. But when we don't have wisdom, we get very confused what kindness means. And so the way I led you through the motivation this time, okay, the first step was directly looking at everybody equally as having the wish for happiness and the wish not to have suffering. Okay? So the first step is you're not looking at individual personalities. You're not thinking about your special connection to them and their special connection to you and developing compassion just based on that. Yeah, because that can lead you in all sorts of crazy directions sometimes. Yeah, but we start out instead of looking at all people's individual characteristics, we look deep in the heart of everybody and see that everybody's exactly the same in wanting happiness and not wanting suffering. Okay, so are you with me? We're not looking at, there's cousin Joe who has cancer, and there's so much suffering, and he and his family are suffering so much. And there's, my nephew, Sam, who has this problem, and there's my niece, Susan, who has that problem, and I have so much compassion for them, and I'm, going to help the whole family, get everybody together, okay? Because if you have compassion like that and you don't have much wisdom, you wind up right smack in the middle of the crazy family dynamic. Don't you? Yeah? And how much can you do to remedy your crazy family dynamic when your mind is crazy also and operating with attachment and anger and so on? Okay? Whereas when we look at everybody equally, whether they're family members or friends or beggars in India or, street people in the States or, rich people in Latin American countries, it doesn't matter. You look at the bugs and the cockroaches and the fish, everybody, yeah, in the hearts of everybody, not their temporal problem right now, but what's really in their hearts, which is everybody is just struggling, trying desperately to be happy, trying not to suffer, not knowing what the cause of happiness and suffering are. Yeah? And when you really think about that, that's really true. I mean, why do people deal drugs? It's not because they're mean, nasty, horrible people. They're trying to be happy. And that's what they see as their way to be happy. Yeah. So benefiting them doesn't mean buying the drugs from them so they have more income. That's not benefiting them. Yeah. You look in their heart, you see that they're exactly like everybody else, wanting happiness, not wanting suffering. Yeah. And then the real way to benefit beings is to be able to show them about karma, to teach them about karma, so they can start differentiating on their own what is virtuous, what is not virtuous. Okay. So then you say, what? I'm supposed to stand on the street corner and teach everybody karma? And whenever I see somebody in society doing something bad, I'm supposed to go up and say, that's negative karma. You're going to hell. No, that's not what we do. Okay. Yeah, but we see that if we're going to benefit beings, we need to get ourselves together. as long as we're a mess, then how can we benefit others? As long as our mind gets overwhelmed by attachment and obsession for people or objects or status or whatever, as long as our own mind, gets so hung up in anger, as long as we're always putting people in categories of friend, enemy, and stranger, and considering ourselves the most important one of all, how, our ability to be of benefit to others is going to be really, really limited. It's limited by our own afflictions. It's limited by our own self-centeredness. So we see that in order to be able to benefit others, we have to work on ourselves. So here we go into, when I was speaking the other day about being the medical student, so that you learn medicine, so then you can go practice it, instead of wanting so bad to be a surgeon that you just take your pocket knife and, start cutting. You get educated first, you get trained first, and then you act with your compassionate motivation. And so we too have to do the same things. And so we're training on one hand. We need to take time out and train and do our daily practice. And at the same time, according to our ability, we need to be of benefit to others. Okay? But the way we benefit them, we have to think clearly about what that is. And really think, what does benefiting someone mean? When you have a small child, when you're raising your child, as a parent, you love that child, more than anything. So you want to give that child everything. And you want that child to have everything and to, have everything you didn't have. Okay. So then you go and you give your child everything. Does that benefit the child? If you give your child everything, all they have to do is say, Mom, Dad, I want this, and you go get it. That doesn't help the child, does it? So in a similar way, just going along with what everybody else wants you to do doesn't necessarily benefit those people. We have to really stop and think, what does benefiting mean? Okay? And we have to also be tactful in how we benefit, because if we come on too strong, you come off of the retreat and then you go home and you say, and a family member, wants to go do something, and you start giving them a big lecture about that's negative karma and you're attached to the 5 desires. That's not going to go over real well when you come back to your family after being in retreat. So you have to be gentle, you have to be tactful, and approach things in a soft way. You can't come on full force Dharma, because that's not what sentient beings need, and that's not going to benefit them. So when we benefit, we have to think, of the other person's mental state. And how can we gradually, do things that help their mental state improve? So instead of looking at other people for what we can get out of them, how they can fulfill our needs, how they can give us what we want, we start looking at them, in terms of, well, how can I teach them valuable principles that will help them in their lives so that they can be happy and create the cause of happiness. Okay? So that really changes the way we relate to people. Yeah? Because so often we go in with my needs. Yeah? And, looking, every relationship is about, can you fulfill my needs? Can you fulfill my wishes? Can you be what I've always wanted somebody to be? And when we go into relationships with that kind of attitude, it's a setup for problems. Yeah? In the same way that if somebody expected you to be everything they always needed and to fulfill all of their needs, you would say, sorry, I can't do that. Nobody can fulfill anybody else's needs totally. Yeah? So to learn to be responsible for ourselves and then be kind to others, thinking about, what really benefits them in the long term. Okay? So we don't often have a lot of wisdom. We often do a hit and miss job. That's okay. Because at least we're trying, and even if we miss, we learn from it. Okay? So our effort to benefit may very well be hit and miss. We make a lot of mistakes, but we learn from our mistakes, like, whatever it is we do, and we see it backfired. Yeah? You ever done that? Tried to help somebody and it's backfired? Yeah, how many times? Can you count them all? Yeah. So the important thing is to learn from that and, come back again and check our motivation. Yeah. But this way of looking at sentient beings as if they're all equal in wanting happiness and not suffering, helps to free us from our attachment and aversion and apathy towards others. Because the attachment, aversion, and apathy really get in the way of being of benefit. Okay? So it's good in your meditation, take some time and think about this. Think of people who you have attachment for and, kind of look over your life and see, what the result of that attachment has been for you and for them. And then think of people that you have aversion towards and what's the result of that been. And people that you have apathy towards, what's the result of that? And then once we see the disadvantages of those three emotions, then that helps us to see the wisdom of not looking at people as individual personalities who can meet my needs and give me what I want, but to look in the hearts of everybody and know that everybody's equal, wanting happiness, not suffering. Okay? So, quite effective to, spend some of your meditation time when we're doing checking meditation, the Lamrim meditation. Think about this and apply this to your life. And, it's very, very helpful. Very helpful. And then when your mind sometimes rebels and goes, but I don't want to see everybody as equal. This person's special to me and I want to be special to them. Yeah? Then go back and say, okay, play out that scene. Yeah. What happens when I'm special to somebody and they're special to me? What happens? Where does that go? You know? And we may not be able to separate from all the attachment, but as somebody said yesterday, you start to see what is actually love and what is attachment, and then try and strengthen the love part and diminish the attachment part. Because the thing is, love, the definition of love is you want somebody to have happiness in its causes. Okay. Attachment is I want you to have happiness in its causes as long as that happiness in its causes includes me and satisfies my needs and fulfills everything I want. Yeah? So there's a few strings attached. Yeah? And strings make for mess. We get tangled up in the strings. Mm-hmm. Whereas, if we train our mind gradually, you just give and offer kindness, and that's it. That's its own reward, no strings attached. Yeah. Then the relationship goes much better and we're more peaceful. Mm-hmm. Then however they react, what to do? Yeah? Uh-huh.
This is really hard to do.
Yes, it is very hard to do.
And what I find sometimes is some of the red flags is that if I am catering to my attachment and I'm trying to get other people, like maneuvering myself and strategizing, if there's resentment in my mind that comes in relationship to that person, there's attachment involved. And then when I try to change my pattern of dynamic with the person, if I start feeling guilty when I'm switching gears, I also know that I'm working myself out of a very difficult pattern of where I'm really trying to please people and trying to do what they want. Is that when you're trying to change your mind and really be clear about, what is helpful, what's not, there's this place that's so uncomfortable because you're not doing what you've been doing for so long, but you're not really clear and strong about what would better serve them. And there's this place where I get really unstable emotionally, and I get I question my ability. I guess that's where I find myself in I'm changing an old pattern in relationships.
Okay. Anybody else had that? Yeah? So you're trying to change. Yeah, because you see the disadvantages of your old pattern. But when you stop playing out your same pattern, what do I do? Who am I? And what does benefiting really mean? And this is scary. This is anxiety producing. Maybe I better go back into my old pattern. Yeah. So you definitely, you go through that period of, where you feel quite unstable. And this is where your meditation practice really becomes your refuge. Yeah. Where you just give yourself that space to feel unstable. You have a regular daily meditation practice. You keep coming back again and again to your new values and the principles you want to live by, and you keep thinking about, what does it mean to be kind, and what are my old habits? And so, you really put time and energy into that. And as you do, gradually, it's not going to happen by next Tuesday or even the Tuesday after that. But gradually, over a period of time, then you become more confident in the new habits you're developing and the new approach you're taking. Yeah. So there has to be some willingness to go through that discomfort of letting go of bad habits. Yeah.
Because the other thing that always makes it a little bit more interesting is that for me sometimes because I'm working on it on the inside, I'm not communicating with the person to whom I have this pattern with, and so when I start changing, they get anxious, and then their hook gets a little bit stronger because I'm not playing.
Yep.
And then, but yet I don't know how to come out skillfully and say, this relation, this is not a helpful relationship what we have. This is what I'm doing. And they're going to be like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that are going on while you're trying to change them.
Yeah. You're trying to change. The other person doesn't want you to change.
And the hook comes out.
And yeah, and they hook and the strings get pulled and they become ropes, instead of strings. Yeah. 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 And that happens. And, and at that time, I think it's really helpful to just say, this is only this life's problems. It's only this life's problems. This person is pulling and yanking at me. Compared to all the suffering there is in this world, their suffering is not so great. My suffering is not so great. I don't need to get so obsessed with, now that I'm trying to change, I'm causing them suffering. And Buddhism said you shouldn't harm sentient beings, so I really should go back to all my old pattern habits. No, you need to pull yourself out and have that big view of, it's like all sentient beings are miserable. Yeah. And they're trying to be happy and they don't know how. And this, there's no reason for me to feel guilty and take responsibility for somebody else's unhappiness if I am acting with integrity and not trying to cause their unhappiness. Yeah, because that's what you're doing is, well, I'm trying to change. But now they feel insecure and they're grasping and they're unhappy and they feel abandoned and I'm the cause of it and I'm so guilty. That's the old habit, dear, isn't it? That you talk yourself back into without even realizing it.
Which is why they get to be such old, crusty habits, because they never get past that point of, guilt.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
They repeat themselves.
Not all dynamics. Some family dynamics.
Yeah. Anything else?
Well, in a similar way, this is why people like doctors and nurses can't treat their own family members or their friends.
Yeah.
Because the perspective is gone.
Mm-hmm.
This bias towards this person. And you can't see the whole picture.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, it's this mess.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. So they often recommend that professionals don't handle their families, health problems or legal problems or whatever it is. Yep.
I find the pattern also challenging when trying to cultivate new positive habits like generosity.
Mm-hmm.
Being very unclear what the what the skillful thing to do in the situation is.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, so I find myself spending a lot of time thinking about what the right skillful thing to do and kind of like examining, well, am I falling back into a pattern of being more miserly, or am I, just being too overly ambitious here or whatever. And I think what I should do is spend more time just like making a decision and giving with a good intention and then letting it go.
Exactly. Exactly. Stop doubting yourself. You have a good intention, there's a feeling in your heart, you give, rejoice. Yeah?
Not worry about how it ends up.
Yeah. 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 And just rejoice, because if you give and then you go, oh, I shouldn't have given that much, then you're destroying the karma, you know? If you're miserly and, just give a little, then afterwards, sometimes your mind bugs you, but then you have to say, well, what was my motivation in giving? Yeah, because I know when I don't give a whole lot, sometimes my motivation isn't really kindness, it's to avoid looking bad. How can I give enough so that I keep most of it, but I don't look bad in front of other people? So then I have to look at that, if that's my real motivation. But even if I don't give a lot, but I give with a kind attitude and my motivation is really good, then how much I give isn't really the issue. Yeah. Okay, so if I give a little bit, but my heart's in there, great, don't doubt it. If I give a little bit, telling myself that it's a good motivation, but actually it's to avoid looking bad, then I have to deal with my lousy motivation. Okay. Mm-hmm.
I suppose the same could be said for giving kindness or compassion or love. Like in Venerable Senke's example, it's kind of the same in relationship as in donation.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the same, like maybe I give too much honesty or honesty in a relationship, and that's never been that clear to the other person, it sets them off. Well, if the intent was good in the beginning, then to be okay with that, even if it comes back in a hurtful way, to just then now react again with good intent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very much. Very much. And, sometimes if you see the reaction you're getting back, you continue on with your good intent, but you realize maybe I'm doing something that is more than what this person can handle at this moment. So if I really want to communicate with them, I have to go slower for their benefit, so that I can really... Honesty isn't just me saying what I want to say. Honesty is me saying it so that they can hear it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Regarding that same topic, how can I check myself and not give myself permission to say, oh, I have a good motivation. I don't care that the other person is suffering because my motivation is good.
If you're thinking like that, like, oh, I don't care if they suffer, I have a good motivation, then chances are you don't have a good motivation. Okay? If you're just flippant about the whole thing. Yeah. What I'm talking about is not feeling guilty and taking responsibility for other people's emotions, but also not, masquerading a bad intention by painting it over with pretty words. Okay. Mm-hmm.
May I ask a question about yesterday's teaching?
Yeah.
So, the thing about, I don't know if this falls in the category of undiluted doubt, maybe there's some doubt there, but I couldn't help but think the stories that you read were really good, and what I got out of them was that
All the stories.
that you
Okay. Mm-hmm.
that they were like basically, metaphors, powerful reminders about sensory attachments.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't, reconcile that these were actual true things.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But I do know that like there are some Buddhists who are very literalist and say, oh, these are realms. And for myself,
Yeah.
I couldn't see that being.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's true. There are some people who take these stories very literally, especially if it's a Jataka story where the Buddha's talking about a previous life. Like, this is literal truth. I don't think that's necessary to take them literally. Yeah. I think the main point in these stories is is to look at what we can learn from them. Yeah, and I don't think we need to see them as literally true. You know, many of the Tibetans, people in different Asian countries take them as literally true. That's okay. I don't need to stir them up and say no. But, my way of approaching them is just, what can I learn from it? And I don't take them literally. There's a really good one I'm going to read to you today. Yeah. that if you took literally, yeah.
In 2,000 years, they're going to talk about Cinderella and Mickey Mouse and wandering.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I guess to broaden that question further, then how do we relate to the Buddha? How do we relate to the Tankas, to the Sangha? Literally true? Literally true?
I believe there's a Buddha, yeah. If I didn't believe there was a Buddha, I don't know what I'm doing here.
And I just mean in a historical sense.
Uh-huh.
I meant in the various manifestations and all the different.
Yeah, that part I take literally, I mean, in my mind, if you have a mind that's completely freed of all obstacles and completely developed all good qualities, then you can do all sorts of things that us ordinary beings who are trapped inside this kind of body cannot do. Yeah. So Buddha appearing in many forms throughout the universe, that I believe in that. I'm not saying you have to, but I do. Yeah.
And many people have had experiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Going back to the subject of giving and how you calibrate what you give, if it isn't received,
If it isn't what?
if it is not received the way, talk about a child who's asking for far too much that might be getting one of your parents,
Mhm.
or druggy, for example, and you're trying to do something that in your mind helps them, but if it's not received,
If it's not the what?
Received as helpful.
Oh, if it's not received as helpful. Oh, yeah. That happens, doesn't it?
is it upon ourselves to calibrate and control how you try to help?
Yeah. Okay, so there's two things here. One is we try and communicate in a way that the person can understand, but also recognizing that some people cannot understand right now, and the help we give gets perceived as harm. Yeah, but if we had a good motivation, we did it as best as we could, then just rest content, even if they get upset and angry. Some seed has been planted. Yeah. So, for example, if you have a family member or a good friend who has a substance abuse problem, and they're asking you for money, and they're going to use it for their substance of choice, and you say, no, I'm not going to give that to you, but I will, give you some money to go to rehab. And they say, I don't need rehab. What are you talking about? You're putting your trip on me. You always do that. On it. You can write the whole script. Okay? Then you just realize, okay, they're not open and receptive right now. But I did plant a seed in their mind. That maybe what you're doing has gone too far. Yeah, and it may take a while for that seed to ripen, for them to come to understand that themselves. Yeah. In Buddhism, we talk a lot about planting seeds. Yeah, and the fact that very often sentient beings are not receptive for whatever reason, But just by coming in contact with, good values, with kindness and whatever, it plants some seeds in their mind, and those seeds will ripen later. Yeah. So, one kind of gross example of this is, when we can, we try and have the teachings in Ananda Hall so our kiddies can listen. So our kiddies clearly cannot understand, yeah, but we make sure they're in the room and they listen. And the idea is that sometime when they're reborn human in the future, there will be the seeds of listening to those teachings that may help them. Yeah. There's an old story. Now this one I don't know whether you take literally or not. Okay. But it has a point that I think is very good. Vasubandhu was one of the great Abhidharma scholars, and it was said that he was in a cave, I guess, doing retreat, and every day he would recite these Abhidharma texts, especially the one he wrote, the Abhidharma Kosha, and then the commentary he wrote on it. And he would recite these. And there was one pigeon who would perch outside the cave and got the whole oral transmission of these texts, as a pigeon. But then later, when the pigeon was reborn as a human being, it became Vasubandhu's key disciple, Stiramati, who understood all the Abhidharma texts. Yeah? So, there's this thing of planting seeds. It's the same principle, if you don't believe that, as in a movie theater when they flash drink Coke, and you don't even notice it, but you go out and, buy some Coke. So the same idea, planting seeds.
So you let it go, you don't try a different approach, you don't push too hard and you don't overdo it.
Yeah, don't push so hard that it just becomes confrontational, but just maybe, leave it and then see if there's other ways to approach it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I have difficulty sometimes finding the right language to use, even though my intention is good.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, my nephew, he's in prison, okay, and he's a heroin addict. He's cleaned up, but he's not doing anything to address his addiction. I can smell it a mile away. I used to be a counselor. I know what he's doing, but that's not why he's in prison. He's in there for some other charges. But the bottom line is, he's doing the manipulative stuff. He's asking everybody for money, everybody. So I can see it. I tell my other family members, I've had a discussion with him. I said, please don't do that. It's not helpful. That he doesn't need the money. And they agree, actually. They said, yeah, you're probably right. I said, he's not doing anything to take responsibility for his actions. He's not addressing his addictions. He's not, he's not doing what he needs to be doing. He's pulling at your heartstrings and asking for money, and it's very manipulative. Don't want to do it. I have to admit, at first I was a little frustrated, but then I softened and I opened my heart. And I said, okay, just if he asks why, just tell him that it's not helpful. But I don't feel like that's the right language to use. Even though that's the truth, is there a way for me to say because
You mean if he asks you why?
He's not going to ask me because he knows better. But my parents are asking. Well, what should we? Because they agree. They're like,
I think tell him the truth.
Yeah.
Just tell it straight, clean. This is what you're doing. I'm not going to support that because that's not helpful. Yeah, because not language of bad and wrong and evil, but this is leading you in a direction that is not healthy and not helpful, and I'm not going to support it. Yeah, I mean, because you know very well that people with substance abuse problems, if you don't say it straight, they don't hear it. Yeah. So, okay, shall we go on? Yeah, you don't want to miss out on this story, do you? Okay. So we were talking about touchables yesterday, okay? Yeah, so we're on this paragraph. Okay, so this attachment is difficult to abandon. How does one know this? Take, for example, a person attached to sensual forms. Ordinarily, if one contemplates the 36 categories of impurity in the body, one generates a mind of renunciation. So normally, if you have a lot of lust, when you start going through the different parts of the body, like we were talking about yesterday, your sexual desire goes down. Okay? Okay, and you have a mind of renunciation, just meaning that, you're chilled out for a while. If, however, one has developed an attachment to touch, even though one may then become aware of the impurity, one may nonetheless continue to crave its sensations of subtle softness. Okay, so at this point, contemplation of impurity may not provide any benefits. It is for this reason that it is difficult to relinquish. So if your attachment is very deep and it's already been aroused, then if you contemplate the insides of the body, your head says, yeah, but, and there's still a lot of desire. Yeah. So that's why he's saying, for that reason, it's difficult to abandon attachment to touchables. Okay. Additionally, because it is so difficult to relinquish, one may continue on this account to regularly generate grave karmic transgressions. Yeah, so if we can't control those kind of attachments, then we keep on doing things out of attachment and wind up creating a lot of negative karma, both motivated by the attachment and by the anger that comes when our desires are frustrated or when things don't go the way we want. Okay, now the story. Okay, so this is a story about the disadvantage of lustful thoughts, okay? So it's kind of a long story. It has a few different scenes in it. So okay. In a long time ago and far off in the past, there was a rishi in the mountains of the state of Benares who in mid-spring was relieving himself into a basin when he observed a buck and a doe mating. Lustful thoughts arose in him, whereupon his semen flowed into the basin. This is some rishi. Okay, then listen to what happens. The doe happened to drink from that basin and became pregnant. When the months of pregnancy were complete, she gave birth to a fawn with the appearance of a man. Yeah, because it was half deer and half man. There were only the differences of a single horn on the head and feet like those of a deer. So it looked like a man, but it had one horn on the head and deer feet. Okay? When the mama deer was about to fawn, she went to a place alongside the rishi's hut and gave birth. She saw that her fawn was a person and so entrusted it to the rishi and left. When the rishi came out, he saw this progeny of the deer, recalled to himself the original conditions, knew that it was his own son, and so took him and raised him. As the son grew to adulthood, the rishi was diligent in instructing him in the topics of study so that he was able to penetrate the 18 great classics of that tradition. Additionally, the son studied sitting in concentration meditation, practicing the 4 immeasurable minds, love, compassion, joy, and equanimity, and then straightaway gained realization of the 5 super knowledges. So I guess this Doman, yeah, could sit in proper meditation position and so on. Okay, so once the son got all these attainments, okay. So once the son had grown up and become a rishi in his own right, he was climbing up the mountain and happened to encounter a great rainstorm. The mud became slippery, causing him to lose his footing, fall to the ground, damage his ur. What's that? E-W-E-R. So maybe it was his alms bowl. Yeah. And injure his foot. Okay. He reacted by becoming greatly enraged. So you see, even if you have concentration, if you're not generating renunciation and practicing properly, when you're not in the concentration, your mind can go, get enraged. With the ur, it must be a vessel of some sort. With an ur full of water, he then cast a spell intended to cause all rains to cease. Due to the influence of the meritorious qualities possessed by this rishi, the dragons, ghosts, and spirits acted on his behalf to ensure that no more rain would fall. Bad news, huh? Because it did not rain, the 5 types of grain and the 5 types of fruit all failed to grow. The populace became impoverished, destitute, and without any way whereby they might go on living. The king of the state of Benares was distressed, worried, and tormented by grief. He ordered all of the great officials to convene and discuss the rainfall situation. Climate change is not new. Yeah. One of the intelligent ones amongst them offered an opinion, saying, "I have heard it rumored that up in the Rishi mountains there is a one-horned rishi who, on account of losing his footing, fell down as he ascended the mountain, injuring his foot. He cast a hateful spell on these rains, whereby he caused them not to fall for a period of 12 years. The king thought to himself, if it goes 12 years without raining, my country will surely be finished. There will be no people left at all. The king then issued an appeal stating, could it be that there is someone who is able to cause a rishi to lose his 5 super knowledges, and who will then instruct me in how to do this for the sake of the people? I will divide the country so that each of us will then be rulers over half of it. So he's looking for somebody else who can destroy the powers, the super knowledges of this rishi. In the country of Benares, there was a courtesan by the name of Santa, who was incomparably beautiful. She came in response to the king's appeal and asked everyone there, is this individual a man, or is it somebody who is not really a man? Everyone replied, he's a man, that's all. He was born as the son of a rishi. So the courtesan said, if he is a man, I will be able to destroy him. Okay, so here, you look at the disadvantages of attachment. After she said this, she took up a tray made of gold filled with fine and precious objects and told the king of the country, I will come back here, having mounted on the neck of this rishi. Okay, so the rishi is going to be carrying me back here when I come. The courtesan then immediately sought to assemble 500 carriages carrying 500 beautiful maidens and 500 deer carts, carrying all sorts of delightful morsels, all of which had been admixed with many herbs. She used many different hues to color them so that they appeared like various kinds of fruits, and then took all sorts of greatly powerful fine liquors, which in appearance and flavor were identical to water. They dressed in tree bark clothing and grass clothing, because that's what rishis, always wore. Yeah. And traveled into the forest, appearing thereby as if they were rishis themselves. They set up grass huts off to one side of the rishi's hut, and then took up residence there. The one-horned rishi was wandering about and observed them. The maidens all came out and welcomed him. They used beautiful flowers and fine incenses as offerings to the rishi. The rishi was greatly delighted. Okay. You see, when you have attachment, people can manipulate you. Okay. All the maidens used lovely words and respectful phrases in greeting the rishi. They took him into their quarters and sat with him on fine bedding. They gave him fine clear liquor, which he took to be pure water. You know what happened then. They gave him delightful morsels, which he took to be fruit. After he had feasted and drunk his fill, he told the maidens, "From the time of my birth on up to the present, this is the first. I have never yet had such choice fruit and such fine water." The maidens said, "Because we have been single-minded in our practice of goodness, we have been single-minded in our practice of goodness, that the gods fulfill our wishes to obtain these choice fruits and fine water." The rishi asked the maidens, "How is it that your complexions and bodies are so full and flourishing?" They replied, saying, "It was because we eat these fine fruits and drink this marvelous water that our bodies are so full and flourishing as this." The maidens then addressed the rishi, saying, "Why don't you come and live here among us?" And he replied, "I too could abide there." Okay, this guy has an attachment problem. The maidens said, "We could even bathe together." He then assented to that as well. The hands of the maidens were soft and tender. When they touched him, his mind was moved. He then continued to bathe together with the beautiful maidens. I'm just reading a Buddhist scripture. Okay, so desirous thoughts began to develop, and consequently he engaged in sexual intercourse. He immediately lost his superknowledges, whereupon the heavens made a great downpour of rain, which went on for 7 days and 7 nights, allowing them the opportunity to remain indoors, devoting themselves to the delights of food and drink. After the 7 days had passed, the liquor and fruit were all gone, whereupon they continued to supply their needs with the waters of the mountains and the fruits of the trees. However, their flavors were not so marvelous, and so the rishi sought more of what they had had before. Greedy. She replied to him, saying, "They are already used up. We must now go together to a place not far from here, where such things can be obtained." The rishi said, "We can do as you wish." They then went off together. The courtesan knew when they had come to a spot not far from the city. Okay, so she's leading him back to the city, remember? The maiden then lay down in the middle of the road and said, "I'm exhausted. I can't walk any further." The rishi said, "If it's the case that you cannot walk, sit upon my shoulders and I will carry you forth." The maiden had already sent along beforehand a letter to the king in which she told the king will now be able to observe my intelligence and abilities. The king ordered up his official carriage and went forth to observe them. He inquired of her, "How did you manage to bring this about?" Riding in on the shoulders of the rishi. The maiden addressed the king, saying, "It is on account of the power of expedient means that I have now already caused the situation to develop in this way. I have no abilities beyond this. Order him to live within the city, make fine offerings to him, and pay respects to him. Keep him satisfied with the 5 objects of desire." Okay? Because if he's satisfied with the 5 objects of desire, he won't regain his super knowledges and the climate will be normal again. The king honored him with the status of a great official. This rishi is really gullible. The rishi had dwelt in the city for only a short span of days when his body became haggard and emaciated. He remembered the mental bliss of concentration absorptions and so grew disgusted with these worldly desires. The king asked the rishi, "How is it that you have become so unhappy that your body has now become so haggard and emaciated?" The rishi replied to the king, "Although I have gained the 5 desires, I constantly recall the leisure and stillness in the forest, the wandering place of all rishis. I cannot get it out of my mind." Okay, so he recalls his former concentration states. Obviously has some attachment to them, but they are more blissful than desire realm objects, for sure. The king thought to himself, "If I force him to go against his aspirations, such a contravention of one's aspirations entails suffering. If the suffering reaches an extreme, then he will die. Originally, this was on account of seeking to get rid of the calamity of drought. Now I have already succeeded in that. Why should I continue to forcibly keep him from his aspirations?" Hence the king then released him. So a kind king. After he had returned to the mountains, he had not applied himself vigorously for so very long before he regained once more the 5 super knowledges. Okay, then the moral of the story. So hopefully this time he gained his concentration and powers, but he'll use them more wisely this time. But on account of this matter, one knows that the dharma of subtle and tender touch is able to move even a rishi. How much more so this would be of any foolish common person. All sorts of causes and conditions such as these illustrate what is meant by renouncing the desire for sensations of subtle smoothness. In this fashion, one renounces the 5 desires. Okay? So good story, huh? I mean, this guy completely could be manipulated due to his attachment, and then out of his attachment he cast this spell and caused all the people of the land so much suffering, all because of attachment, and anger. And then he lost his powers to boot, so, what use is all of that?